Da'atshan, Senior Program Manager with Tekwadi. Thank you to all of our viewing partners in the Middle East and North Africa. And thank you to our speaker today, Robert Carroll. I'll be introducing him shortly. This is the 5th edition of the Tekwadi webinar series. Our team will be live tweeting throughout the webinar, so please follow us at tekwadi.org and feel free to use the hashtag TWWebinarSeries to share any questions that you might have for Rob. We will save the last 10 minutes of the webinar for Q&A, so please do share all of your questions. The topic for today's webinar is Startup Marketing and PR. You will learn how marketing and PR can help your startup reach a broad audience. The webinar is going to cover best practices for advertising on Facebook, Google, and other platforms. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Rob. Thanks again for being with us today.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let me know if I'm not live right now, but I think I am. My name is Rob. I work here at Google in Mountain View, California. And I am thrilled to be talking about marketing and PR today. I'm excited. I have a captive audience here, and I expect a lot of questions, so make sure that you do have questions for me. Ramadan Kareem. I understand it's Ramadan right now. Thanks everybody for staying up late. A little bit of background on me. Let me share my slides here. All right. So before joining Google about a year ago, I was an investment associate at Oasis 500. I helped invest in dozens of companies, young startups throughout Jordan, the UAE, Egypt, Lebanon, Palestine, the Caribbean, Kenya as well, and we deployed upwards of $1 million in across all of those startups. I loved that, being a venture capitalist. That was a lot of fun. While I was doing that, I also wrote for Forbes Middle East, Entrepreneur Middle East, and I was covering startups. And so one thing that we'll jump into in this discussion is how to reach out to reporters to get your startup covered, and the best way to do that. So now I do marketing at Google. I work with brands on their marketing strategy, how to reach their customers on YouTube, on the display network, and how to get them to convert into paying customers. So, awesome. So the things we'll be discussing today are organic marketing, paid marketing, which is what I do here at Google, growth hacks, which are imperative, so important now. You really can't launch a startup without some solid growth hacks built into your product. And then public relations, how to deal with media and news outlets, and how to get exposure that's free for your startup. So before I jump too far into that, I want to make sure that everybody knows that this is a live Q&A. In the Google Hangout, there is a place to ask questions. You can also ask questions live on Twitter. Any question would be awesome, just so I know that people are out there, so I'm not just talking to a blank computer screen. And we'll be sharing this content as well on Twitter. So awesome.
Thank you for the introduction, Rob. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Should I just jump into things, or are we switching to something else?
Feel free to jump right in. If there are any questions that come in right away, I'll be sure to share that with you in the chat. Otherwise, we'll save the questions for the end. But we are with you, and thanks again for giving this presentation.
Love it. All right, thanks. Cool. So organic marketing, let's jump right in. So there's 3 tips that I have for you with organic marketing. And by organic, I mean things you don't pay for. So this could be Twitter or Facebook. This could be a lot of different other things as well. So first, be where your users are. Second, be in the moment. and third, engage in conversations. So what do I mean by that? And definitely stop me if you can't see my slides. So first, be where your users are. When I was living in Jordan and working at Oasis 500, we worked closely with Marca VIP. Marca VIP is headquartered in both the UAE and Amman, Jordan. And they, if you're not familiar with them, I'm sure you are, they do flash sales for luxury goods, purses, watches, clothes, etc. So we talked to Ahmed Al-Khatib about how he started Marca VIP and how he got that initial growth going from zero to the thousands and hundreds of thousands of users he has now. What he did was a very simple strategy. He got on Facebook and he shared his page, his Marca VIP page, to 20 of his friends, and he committed those 20 friends to share with 20 of their friends. And they continued this process until the sharing had grown exponentially, and Marca VIP had a very big presence across the MENA region. And of course, in each of those posts, there was a link to the Marca VIP website where users could look at flash sales and buy products. So this is important because he didn't use Instagram, he didn't use WhatsApp, he didn't use Twitter. He used what he thought would be the most relevant social media platform, and that at the time was Facebook. And so he was where his users were, and he got them. He didn't use a radio announcement. He didn't put flyers out. He thought about who his users were. What platforms are they on? Where can I engage with them? And Facebook was obviously the choice there. It's not going to be the choice in other situations, but Facebook is a good option for something like flash sales. Second, be in the moment. So when in the Super Bowl, probably 6 years ago, at one point during the game, all the lights went out. The power was shut off. If you can imagine, there's tens of thousands of people in one stadium, and the lights go out. And the networks that were broadcasting the game also were very confused. They said, "What is going on? Why is the power gone out for this huge stadium?" And this is the largest TV event of the year in the United States. And so one very intelligent brand, Oreo, owned by Nabisco, took advantage of the moment. And they created this little ad, and they put it on Twitter, and it immediately got a ton of attention, upwards of 15,000 retweets, and it was a funny little advertisement, that had to do with that precise moment. And there's lots of ways to be in the moment, both in pop culture, whether there's events going on. You have to be very relevant when it comes to marketing. You can't just put out your marketing and hope people see it. You have to be where the people are, and you have to follow what's going on, from day to day. A good way to do this is just to be up on the news and to know exactly, what is happening in the world, especially in your community, where you're trying to grow. Another thing I'd say, for going back to be where your users are, there are definitely communities where your users are already living. For example, Reddit.com is a very popular page. If you're launching a new product or startup that has to do with television, you can go and join those Reddit communities that have to do with TV shows or TV tech or anything to do with social TV, and you can jump in there and you can engage with those people, and you can share your product and you can try to get it out that way. A lot of good tech products launch on producthunt.com. Product Hunt is a place where people go to look for the newest, hottest app. And so if you have a new app, that's a good place to do it. So keep that in mind. There's also actual community events where you can go set up a booth and get your product out that way. So third, engage in conversations. You definitely don't want to be this flat wall where you're just talking to people and you're not listening. Real Mac Software, they make some of my favorite software for Macintosh, and they, as you can see from their Twitter feed, they are talking to their customers, and 3 tweets down, you're seeing they're offering a free upgrade. They'll do promotions. Everything's very much a conversation. They're not just, it's not a set it and forget it formula. They're looking to see how they can be helpful to their users and offer solutions to their problems. So as you try to get traction for your startup, wherever you may be in the initial stages, or very far along with a lot of users already, make sure you're engaging in conversations. Awesome. So paid marketing. So that was all organic marketing. That was what you can do for free. It requires hustle. It requires you to be diligent and present and always on. And you should definitely have someone within your company who is fully dedicated to user acquisition and growth. Someone who has always on their phone and always tweeting and Facebooking and Instagramming and connecting with users in their different communities, whether it's reddit.com or whether it's an actual community event, a concert, whatever it might be, someone needs to be doing that. So it's organic and it's free, but you also need to have someone who's on top of that, and it might not be free if you're paying that person. If you aren't paying that person, hopefully they have equity in your startup and they're doing it for free. Awesome. Let's jump into paid marketing. So paid marketing, people generally think of Facebook and Google when it comes to paid marketing. I work at Google, so I think it's awesome, but I also think Facebook's awesome. The pros of Facebook are that you can target users based on their interests. Facebook users over time have liked certain pages, they've engaged with certain people, they've been to certain places and events, and they've posted, regarding certain topics. This is all data that Facebook collects, and it's very powerful data when you want to profile a user and you want to know what they might like. So Facebook has very powerful user profiling and knows what we like. It's not always perfect. A lot of times we have a lot of liked pages that are just hidden back there and they're screwing up the algorithm. But in general, Facebook has a good pulse on who people are, what their age and gender and demographic is, where they're located, and what they like. And that can be very powerful. Facebook is generally easier to set up and manage. It's a more simple and basic concept and a more simple and basic campaign strategy. So it can be easier to manage. That's one of the pros. And third, Facebook is really easy with cross-device tracking, with conversion tracking, with any sort of data analytics. They don't give you a lot of data, but to set it up and to look at the data is very, very simple. It requires that you install one piece of code on your website, and it will take care of all of that for you. So that's Facebook. Jumping to Google over here on the right. Google is awesome because it targets users based on their intent. What are they looking to do? What are they hoping to accomplish? So it's very good at getting conversions quickly. It's a very step one and step two. What are they looking for? Here's a product or service to solution your problem. So Google can get you more, in my opinion, conversions more quickly. And when I say conversions, I'm really just talking about sales or app downloads or whatever it is. You don't have to make money off of it, but whatever you want users to do. Sign up for a newsletter, download your app, make a purchase, etc. Awesome. Google's also awesome because it has a broad network. I would say much broader than Facebook. 80% of the web uses Google Ads. So across the search network, which is the Google search box, Google image search, Google shopping, etc. And then you also have the display network. All the pictures around the web, like I said, 80% of the web. And they might follow you around because when you click on a website, you might get remarketed, and then you start seeing the same picture everywhere. Marca VIP is actually famous for putting its ads everywhere. And then you also have YouTube, and YouTube is really good for understanding who users are, what their interests are, and then you can put your ads there. The third thing that's great about using Google, is that it has robust and transparent analytics. So Google Analytics is the industry standard for looking at what's going on your website, what's going on with your users once they reach your website, and Google is going to take advantage of that. So you're going to get a lot more data. You're going to get clearer data, and you're going to get more transparent data in the sense that Facebook's going to take credit for a lot of conversions that are questionable. Google's going to be more conservative about that. They're not going to take credit for conversions that they're not absolutely positive are thanks to a Google ad. So here we're talking about, at a high level, we're talking about advertisements. We're talking about Facebook or Google ads. You pay for them. They're not free. And they can be a really good way to get traction for your startup. I work and live in Silicon Valley. I see every single day ads for hot startups. They're sometimes on Facebook. They're sometimes on Google. They're trying to get me to download apps. They know that I'd be interested, and oftentimes they actually work. So this is Facebook and Google.
So Rob, at what point do you recommend a startup actually start using paid advertising?
Yeah, that's a great question because it does cost money, and a startup may be starting with $0 in cash. Most of from a higher level, if we take a step back, a startup's cash should be largely used to pay people to get stuff done, and that's usually where it goes, is salaries. And it should not, in the early stages, it should not go largely to advertising. That being said, you can do these for very cheap. So Facebook and Google, you can set a daily budget for each of these. Let's say you just have $100 a month for Facebook. You can get some good traction with $100 a month. Same with Google. If you have $100 a month, you can be spending a certain number of dollars a day. You can get your ads in front of people, and you can make something happen. So I would say very early on, you should be looking at paid marketing, whether it's Facebook or Google, but with a caveat, but you should be doing it in a very, very narrow strategy. So if you're doing some ads on the Google Display Network, you don't want to target people based on iPhone apps. iPhone apps is a huge category. There's a lot of competition to show your ads in that category. What you would want to do if you have an iPhone app, you would want to narrow that down. You would want to say, I'm targeting on the Google Display Network, I'm targeting iPhone apps that have to do with games, that are in the Arabic language, and for people that are aged 18 to 21, based only in Cairo, Egypt. And so you can get really narrow there, and you can start to target a certain city or even a certain neighborhood with certain interests. So I would say, to answer your question, I would use paid marketing pretty early on, but I would make sure that you're not wasting money on it, and you are limiting how much money you spend by targeting a very, very narrow demographic. And as a side note, you're always going to want to target a narrow demographic to start your startup. If you have an iPhone app, you don't want to just sell it to the whole world at once. You want to get traction within a community. You want to win the hearts and minds of that community first, whether it's 100 people or 1,000 people, and then you want to move into other communities. But you need some people who really believe in your startup, to have some momentum. So always start small. Always think small when you're targeting people. That's a good tip with starting a startup.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Rob.
All right, great, thank you. Great question. So for Facebook, you can set up and manage, in a very simple way. You're going to use demographics, interests, behaviors, connections. Not using keywords. Instead of kind of jumping through all this, I'm actually going to just show you a little bit how this works. Let's see. We will, yeah, so I'm going to show you actually what the Facebook Ads Manager looks like. So you can get an idea of what you're working with. So if you go to the Ads Manager, You're going to be logged into your personal account up here. And it's going to give you a lot of options. You can boost a post that you already posted from your startup's Facebook page. You can promote your page, the entire page. You can send people to your website if you want them to get out of Facebook and onto your website. Increase conversions, get app installs. Facebook's really good at app installs. And all these other options, right? So let's say you want to send people to your website. That's the most basic way. You're going to create an audience. You're going to decide, where those people are. Let's say they're, you can do the U.S. and other places or just other places. You're going to create an age range. Maybe you just want 15 to 23. Both genders, languages, etc. And then you're going to choose a daily budget. And let's say maybe we only want to do $5. Facebook is super simple to set up. Obviously, you're going to want to create some graphic designs, etc., to get those out. And that's a whole other story that I won't get into. But Facebook is very, very easy to use. So I'll leave that up in case we have questions. Now we're on Google. This is Google AdWords. Google AdWords has a lot more functionalities, a lot more options, a little less easy to use. But in my opinion, you can do more stuff with it. So when you get into AdWords, which is obviously free to use, both of these, Facebook and AdWords, are free to use. Before you start spending on ads, you're going to create a campaign. So do you want to be on the display network? Do you want to be on the search network? Do you want to sell actual products on Google? Those pictures that show up. Do you want to advertise on YouTube? And there's a couple ways to do that. You can actually show your own YouTube video before someone tries to watch another video. Of course, we've waited to watch our YouTube videos because something else is playing. Some advertisement. You can set those up, and then you can also get people to download your Android or iOS app, and these are really effective too. When you set up a campaign like that, you're going to have your ads for the campaign in here, and you're going to have keywords. Keywords are a unique thing to Google. Keywords, like I said, when you're using Google, you're helping people find things based on their intent. What are they looking for? What do they want to accomplish, etc. So here, for a certain advertisement, you might have iOS, games, Arabic. These are all different keywords that you can show up for. And a keyword can look like this: plus iOS, plus games, plus Arabic. You can do plus Arabic, plus games. These are just two keywords here. Each line is a different keyword. If you want to get into kind of like how those work, the different types, there's good resources online. You can tweet me, and I'll send you some resources. But this is kind of you can also bid on competitors. So if you have a new Arabic iPhone game, my friend runs Tamatem, so you want to compete with Tamatem at the game company out of Jordan. You can also bid on Tamatem games. Hopefully you can see some of this. I don't know how big your screen is, but I'm typing in here these keywords. So and then you would save these to a specific ad. Awesome. So that's how that works. Facebook and Google, I can answer more questions on that at the end. But in general, don't be afraid to use these. They look complex, especially Google AdWords, but they can be very easy to set up, and you can do them with a very small budget and still get some effective results. Great. So let's jump back into this presentation. Awesome. And let's talk about growth hacks. So now we've talked about organic marketing. We've done paid marketing. And now we're talking about growth hacks. Growth hacks should be free, but it's something that you're going to build into your product. And we're about 30 minutes in, so I think we're making good time here. So let's talk about a couple of my favorite growth hacks. So when Airbnb was trying to get off the ground, they were looking how to get users. That's what every startup's trying to do. How do we get people to download our app, visit our website, buy our product, whatever it is? Airbnb is a startup based in San Francisco. I'm sure you're familiar with them, but for those who aren't, they are disrupting the hotel industry, and they're allowing people to live, allowing people to rent out rooms of their house or their entire house for a cost, and it's all done within an app, and it's super simple. 2 weeks ago, I went to Havana, Cuba. I rented 2 different Airbnbs throughout the weekend, and it was a very seamless experience. All the payments were done through the app. All the communication was done through the app with the house owner, and it was a very simple, beautiful experience. And it was a lot cheaper than staying in a hotel. So that's Airbnb. When they were trying to get people to go to Airbnb.com to sign up to use their service, they decided to implement a growth hack. So what they did, and many of you might be familiar with this one, it's kind of one of the more well-known growth hacks, is they automatically posted everything on their content to Craigslist. So when people were looking on Craigslist for a place to stay in San Francisco for the weekend, they would also see this Airbnb listing, and then they would click on the link to Airbnb, and then they could book the room through there. I don't know if Craigslist liked this. I don't think Craigslist cared because they're not monetized. It's just a public service website started by a guy named Craig Newmark, but it was the perfect growth hack. They just double posted everything from their site onto Craigslist, and they got a lot of eyeballs on it. So they went where the people already were. They went where their users already were looking for what they offered. Awesome growth hack. They built it into their product, and it helped them grow quickly and very organically. So Mailbox is another example of a great growth hack. Mailbox launched in, probably 2011 or 12, and when they launched, they had a great promotional video. They showed how the app works. It was an email app. It was going to be much more beautiful, much more usable. It was going to be a great user experience. But when they launched the video, they didn't launch the app at the same time. Instead, they launched a sign-up list, and it was a wait list. They said, jump on the wait list. You'll be the first to know when you're ready to join and when we have spots for you. They said, we don't want to overload our servers. They gave some reasons about why they couldn't just let people join right now, but they made a wait list. And so days and weeks and even months passed, and people were getting on this wait list. They had upwards of 50,000 people on this wait list, just trying to get this app that they'd never even tried before. They didn't even know if it was going to work well. So this is called delayed gratification. They caused a big fuss. They had a great promotional video, and then they created a wait list. The wait list got more people to talk about it. People mentioned it to their friends. They felt very proud that they're on the wait list. And if you wanted to move up the wait list, this is very typical tech startup behavior now. If you want to move up the wait list, you tweet about it, you Facebook it, you share it in any other way. And so they had all this free growth hack advertising because of this wait list. Eventually, Mailbox launched. It was a great app. A lot of people downloaded it. They were sending 60 million messages a day, and that's exactly when Dropbox, who we all know, decided to purchase Mailbox. And so, very successful, short-lived company, actually not in the App Store anymore, but they used an excellent growth hack called the wait list, delayed gratification, and organic sharing to get their app in front of hundreds of thousands of people. So these are growth hacks. Growth hacks must be built into the product. They're using human psychology to make people share the product. So this used to not happen. You used to just build the product and then do the marketing on the side. Now what startups are doing is they're doing both in one. They're building the product and they're building marketing into the product. Airbnb had it built in. Mailbox had it built in. LinkedIn, if you remember, LinkedIn, when you first signed up, they asked you to email all your contacts. That's a growth hack. So that was built right into the product. It was a way to connect with people, and it was obnoxious and it was annoying, but you know what? It worked, and now everybody uses LinkedIn. So that's how a growth hack works, and that's why it's important. it can get you a lot of users very, very quickly. Cool. So let me just jump back to everything we've covered here. Organic marketing, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. And just to remind you, you want to be where your users are, be in the moment, and engage conversations. We talked about paid marketing and how to use Facebook and Google. There's also other ways. There's other rising platforms for that. There's Twitter and there's Snapchat, open to just a small number of companies currently, but probably more in the future. There's Instagram, which is the same, I believe. I don't think it's an open ad exchange yet, but it will be. And then we talked about growth hacks, and we talked about how you can build into your product a way to market your company, your startup. Now, finally, in the last 10 minutes, we're going to talk about public relations. Public relations, we usually think about in terms of magazines, news outlets, press releases, things that are a little bit more traditional when they come to mind. And they are a little bit more traditional, but the thing is they are necessary and they are very, very helpful. So I used to write for Forbes Middle East. I was also writing for Entrepreneur Middle East, WAMDA, Jordan VC, a bunch of these tech or business outlets, and I was able to get to know what it's like for startups to reach out to reporters and get covered. I've also worked with PR people here in Silicon Valley, and gleaned from their experience as well. So now I'd like to share kind of like some of the secrets to getting your startup covered in a big way in one of these news media outlets.
So Rob, before we jump into that, there's another question that came in around your response to when a startup should use paid advertising. Can you give more tips to startups or entrepreneurs that are cash strapped and have a tight marketing budget on how they can get the most results from that tight budget?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me see if I can come back over here. If I understand correctly, the question is, if you're a startup with little cash, you're cash strapped, how do you manage marketing if you don't have that much to spend on paid marketing like Google and Facebook? Is that right?
Right. So how do you make the most of a tight marketing budget? Yeah,
great question. So people are the most useful, right? So your best marketing is going to be word of mouth. So when I started using Instacart's a hot startup here in Silicon Valley. It wasn't because I started seeing Instacart ads. It's because my Facebook friends and my Twitter friends and people at work were using Instacart, and it's a grocery delivery service, and they recommended it to me. So always more powerful than an advertisement on the web is going to be word of mouth and the network you have. So some of the things I mentioned that are free that are more useful than paying for advertisements are joining a community and being active in that community, whether that's Reddit or Product Hunt or something like Hacker News is very popular in Silicon Valley in terms of getting your startup out there. I'm sure there's tons of other chat groups or services that can help you share or get your message out. You're also going to want to rely on those people around you to share and use your product and test it. Beta testing is also a great way to get your product out there, have people look at it, use it, try it. You want to build hype in whatever way you can. And so utilize the people around you on your startup team and in your community to share that message organically as far as you can. When you do have capital, when you do have cash, you can look at using paid marketing. I think regardless, you can do it pretty inexpensively, and you can start to get the word out. It's a good thing to just have it, and then you can increase your budget over time. You're always going to end up paying for customers no matter what. And by paying for customers, I mean through advertising dollars. Just make sure you're getting a good return on your investment. And something you can do really well with Facebook and Google is measure what is your ROI. For each dollar I spend on Facebook, how many people are signing up for my service? If it's not a good number, just cut the marketing budget or just stop advertising. But if you're getting 30 people to sign up for your startup for every dollar, that's awesome. And you can measure that on the back end in the dashboard of Twitter, Facebook, Google, etc. So another way to actually just get free marketing is through public relations. And so unless there's another question, I'll jump into that. And I think that might answer this question a little bit better as well.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, so public relations, like I said, it's about getting press, being in magazines, being on websites, having people cover you. You should never pay for this stuff. This is all free. So first thing you're going to want to do to get this kind of coverage is make your story bigger. This is before you approach any journalists, before you approach any thought leaders, anybody that you want to tweet about you or whatever it is. Think first, what is the most valuable part of your idea, and how can you connect that to a broader consumer need or industry topic? If you're doing something about privacy, end-to-end encryption, some sort of messaging service that's very private, something like, I don't know, FireChat, or WhatsApp just did their end-to-end thing. WhatsApp connected that to a broader dialogue that was going on about privacy. A lot of news outlets wanted to cover that. A lot of news outlets, they wanted to dive into that topic of end-to-end encryption, and so it was an easy story for WhatsApp to share. So try to connect anything you're doing to broader consumer needs or industry topics. I think of, Tomatum, I'll mention again, my friend's startup. They do publishing for games in Arabic. They localize the games. Really cool story. So talking about how the growth of Arabic games, is just increasing drastically within the MENA region. That's a good story. Try to tie it to something bigger than just your product. Second, try to make yourself a thought leader in a specific area. Use your Twitter feed, use your blog, use your Quora account, whatever it is, to be a thought leader in a specific area. If it's privacy and security and you have some sort of software solution for that, make sure you're the expert and you're tweeting everything, you're writing things. Try to do an op-ed or an opinion piece in WAMDA, in Forbes, anywhere, in Entrepreneur, to try to get yourself known as the thought leader. The startup, I think it's called BitOasis, out of Dubai, is run by Ola Dodine. I probably messed up her last name, but she's really good at talking about Bitcoin. She goes to conferences about Bitcoin. She's speaking at these conferences. She's writing about it continually. She was actually featured in Forbes, and she is the thought leader on Bitcoin. And then she has her startup. I believe it's called BitOasis, and she's getting a lot of free coverage for that startup because of her efforts as being a thought leader. Keep an eye on ongoing stories. Write and speak in response to news. Be present. Be there. Tweet about stuff. Write about stuff. Respond to everything, and try to tie anything big, any big story into what your startup's doing about that. Obviously, keep it very relevant. Don't tie in everything, but yeah, try to do that. Finally, find a reporter and email him or her about your views on an ongoing story. Find somebody that's covering your industry, that's covering topics around your startup. If you have an Android game and someone's writing about gaming, make sure you start to develop a relationship with that person. Offer your thoughts, compliment. Writers love to hear, hey, I love this story, here's why I loved it. Also, I would add X, Y, and Z. This is going to be one of your most powerful email pitches that you'll ever do as a startup. Is reach out to a journalist, say, hey, I read your story in WAMDA. I loved that you talked about these 3 things. And to follow up, here's something you might also think about, and here's what my startup's doing about it. I'll try to add that as a slide, because it's just kind of like a formula for setting up an email to send to a journalist, but it's a very useful formula. And don't just think about journalists in your region or your city or your country, although that's the best place to start. Definitely start there. Think bigger too, because everybody's covering stories in the MENA region if that's where you are. And so, also awesome. I know there was Wired magazine did a big story on a hacker in Palestine, and it was awesome. So Wired's a huge magazine based out of the UK, and they do stuff like that. Cool. Second, highlight wins. When you're talking to any journalist or when you're publishing anything or doing a press release, tie the story into your wins. What new product are you launching? What new feature are you launching? Did you sign a new big customer? Is some customer trying out your product, and the customer hopefully has a big profile name like a bank or a telecom company or whoever it is. Did you develop a new partnership? Are you doing a partnership with any sort of venture capital firm? Are you doing a partnership with a money a cash investment? Are you doing a partnership with an accelerator? Are you doing a partnership with a content provider or anybody, a distributor, somebody that fits into your startup's I guess the supply chain or the the value chain of your startup, and then try to make your story as big as possible in a relevant way. And then finally, you're going to want to find the right people and the right platforms. I mentioned this a little bit, but what you want to do is never just buy a media list, never just find a list of journalists or news outlets and just blast them with a press release. Don't just write a press release and send it out. That's the worst thing you can do. They'll blacklist you. They'll publicly shame you. They'll put a screenshot. They'll say, "Oh my gosh, I'm sick of getting press releases." You want to make it very personal, and so first filter down to the top 5 or 10 outlets that you have the best chance to get covered. If you're in the MENA region, reach out to WAMDA. Start to develop a relationship with a journalist there. If they can't write something about you, maybe one of their colleagues can, or maybe they'll put it on the back burner until later. Take a deep look at the editors and reporters who are covering topics related to your startup and develop relationships. So don't be generic, be specific, develop relationships, and be nice, be fun, like be personable. Reach out and say, "Hey, I really liked your piece. I'd love to get coffee if you're ever around." Say, "I'm also really into so and so." Do your research. Try to be like a friendly person. Journalists need content at the end of the day. They need things to write about, so keep that in mind. So if you come in intelligently and you have good content and you have relevant content that ties into a story that they might be covering, you can really do a great job with PR and jump in at the right time. Cool. So we covered a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Definitely reach out to me on Twitter at any point, and I think we're going to jump into questions.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation, Rob. And Rob has kindly offered to share the presentation online after this, so it will be available for everyone to revisit. So another question we have is on any tips that you have for a startup or a business on finding the right talent or skilled people to manage their online marketing?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So talking to here in Silicon Valley, PR is an industry. So like there are people who work just at startups doing PR, and then they might work for one startup for a year, or they might freelance between a couple startups, and so they get paid to do this, and they are experts, and they're awesome. I've met some, I've worked with some, they really know what they're doing. So if you have the cash, pay someone to do PR, and if you have the cash, pay someone to do your in-house marketing. So those are two things, and that's why I'm covering them both in this presentation. There's PR, and then there's marketing. So try to get someone to do your PR, reaching out to newspapers, managing your image, whatever it is, getting you in at the right events, and then try to pay someone to do your marketing. Obviously, if you're a young startup and you're just getting started, marketing should be a big piece of the initial puzzle. If you can, have someone from that founding team who's going to cover sales marketing, and they can get the social media campaigns rolling. They can get the Facebook and Google campaigns rolling. And they can do it for free, obviously, because they're part of the founding team. So if you can pay people to do stuff, great. Find someone who's really expert. If you can't, if it's not in your budget currently, make sure it's part of the initial team, the initial founding team. Someone to run that marketing. Did that answer the question, or can I dive into that deeper?
Yeah, that definitely answers the question. So what are some ways that a startup or an entrepreneur can learn to run their own advertising on Google or Facebook?
Yeah, oh, great question. This is a lot of stuff I do here at work. There's a bunch of YouTube videos that we've done at Google that explain how to use Google AdWords and how to run a YouTube campaign and how to do an app install campaign. So, like all of those resources are out there. Facebook, I imagine, is doing the same thing. They're teaching people how to use these products. Definitely don't pay for a course. Don't sign up for some course that's going to charge you on how to learn how to do this marketing. It's very simple as long as you believe it's simple. Just jump on YouTube and watch how to do these things. That being said, some things can't be learned very quickly, and that's more of like the design and branding side. You're going to want to have someone either in-house at your company or freelance who can design your stuff, who can help you brand your company. That's important because that's your customers are associating your logo with you, or how you portray yourself. So to summarize, don't pay anybody to learn marketing. Just watch YouTube videos on how to do Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google, whatever it is. Watch YouTube videos on that. And then branding and design, find someone who's actually a designer. There's also good resources online to just have a random internet person design stuff for you, and those are like Fiverr.com, 99 Designs, Odesk, things like that, little services that you can pay anywhere between $5 to $100 to get some really good design work done.
That's great advice. Fortunately, we can find everything online nowadays. All these videos exist on YouTube, so very lucky. Let's see, we have another question that came in about specifically Instagram. Instagram is a really strong tool. So do you have any tips around how to use Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram can be very useful. I mean, Instagram is owned by Facebook now, and so what they're going to have is very powerful user profiling. They're going to know the types of things you like, and they're going to get it in front of you at the right moment. I assume Instagram's very big in the MENA region. I know it wasn't always. I know Facebook kind of took the lead, but I'd say, yeah, definitely focus on Instagrams, especially if it's something very consumer-oriented. Something like enterprise software is not, or HR management stuff is not going to do as well on Instagram. That's just not the right market. But if you have anything to do with food, fashion, design, mobile apps, anything like that, definitely check out the Instagram ad offering. They have 400 million users on Instagram. It's a large platform, and you can be very creative with what you do on Instagram. So that's one advantage it has, is you can do really engaging videos or boomerangs or photos or whatever it is, and I would definitely check it out. I'm not sure how far it's rolled out. I'm checking right now. It looks like it's open to advertisers. So I would go ahead and check that out. It's also going to be very easy to set up. It's going to have those step-by-steps. What do you want to accomplish? How much do you want to spend? What picture do you want to show? What's the caption going to be? Where are you going to link to? What's the website you're going to link to? It's all going to be very laid out, very straightforward, similar to Facebook or Google.
Great. So what other interesting platforms are out there that people should consider using in their marketing plan? I know Facebook and Google are definitely the primary two, but what are some other platforms? I mean, we just talked about Instagram. what else is out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So my favorite right now is Snapchat. I mean, I could go on and on about Snapchat.
Yeah.
I have some friends who work there in New York. What's interesting about Snapchat right now is that it's a very personal view into what you're doing. So some of the best startup founders themselves are showing what they're doing on a day-to-day basis to build their startup, and so they're getting tons of coverage like that. Snapchat's cool too because you can do a takeover. Let's say you want more coverage for your startup, so you ask some public figure, some celebrity, whoever, to take over your Snapchat account, and then they're posting their content all day, and they're talking about your startup or whatever it is. And so you can do these cool collaborations with Snapchat to get more coverage. If you do want to spend money there, you can create geo filters, and you can, if there's a specific event or a time period or some sort of, whatever it is, you can actually do it pretty inexpensively, especially for localized things. If there's an event in Lebanon, you can target a specific area and promote your startup on Snapchat. So that's one great way. I've mentioned before, I love communities like Reddit. Reddit's a great way to connect with people who are already maybe looking for your product, because that's what they talk about all day. Let's see, other interesting. I'll think about that. If I can tweet something out after, I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay, great. Let's see, we have another question that came in from a user, specifically about analytics tools and using analytics tools. So what are some of the best tools out there, and how do you recommend they be used?
Yeah, great question. So Google Analytics is a little bit confusing the first time you use it, but it is going to be the most universal in terms of measuring your results. The key thing you'll want to look at within Google Analytics and wherever else you are is your return on investment, also measured as return on ad spend, ROAS. So look at the ROI or the ROAS and make sure you're not spending too much to get traffic. Another thing you want to make sure you're doing with any of these analytics reporting platforms is make sure that it's set up correctly. The last thing you'd want to do is put a bunch of ads online and not track their performance. So usually you have to install a piece of code on your website to make sure that your performance is being tracked. It's called conversion tracking. It's also referred to as a pixel. It's just a little snippet of code. You put it on your website. It's actually very easy to implement, but you want to make sure you're tracking your results, because how else will you know if your marketing is useful? Facebook is going to have its own analytics dashboard built into the Facebook Ad Manager. It's not going to give you as much data, but it's going to be very easy to use. A lot of these are mobile as well. Facebook and Google will have their mobile apps, so you can check that data. If you're doing a content website, anything to do with news media or design or whatever, like if you're publishing content that you want people to consume, the industry standard there is called Chartbeat. You can check that out. But like I said, as a general note, make sure you're tracking everything. You don't want to just throw ads out there. In fact, if someone invites you to pay for something to do advertising, the first question you'll ask is, how can we measure return on investment? And you don't want to just take any metric. You want good metrics that are actually going to show you this many people signed up, this many people bought your product, this many people are on your email list now, whatever it is. ROI is king there. Great question.
Great, thanks, Robin. And you've been providing a lot of great advice and responses to these questions, so thanks. I think we probably have one time for just one more question. The question is about targeting specific audience, and what differences do you see in advertising when targeting audiences in the West versus audience in the Middle East?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. Many of us here on the call have been lucky enough to be in both. I think the key here is to be familiar with the market you're getting in touch with, and I think that assumption is already embedded in the question, and so a very, very good question. For example, I mentioned a friend who's doing a startup that's localizing games to the Arab market. He's familiar with the music that market likes, the type of design that market likes, the type of games, what would be funny, what would not be funny in that market. And so I would say in general, you need someone from that market to run your marketing. If you're in the MENA region and you're trying to reach the US as a market or the UK, you need somebody there, or at least you need to have lived there and be part of that culture for several years. Vice versa, if you're in the US and you're really trying to target the Arab market, the Arab world, you need someone on the ground who understands those customs, traditions, how business is done, how marketing is done, what's funny, what's not appropriate, etc. I can't stress that enough. I mean, I think that's really the only way. And when I lived in Jordan, for example, I relied on my coworkers at Oasis 500, Faisal and Dina, and Karim for everything, because I really didn't know the customs or traditions. And so when we were trying to run Startup Grind, which is a Google for Entrepreneurs initiative, they took the lead on all of those types of things with marketing because they're familiar with what works. Let me know if I answered your question there, but in general, you need someone who's very familiar with that culture and also good at marketing to make sure they're taking care of that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Familiarity with the culture, what are the norms, what's accepted, what's not, is really important when it comes to targeting the specific audiences. So you're absolutely right on that. And with that, I think we are at about an hour, so we're going to wrap it up. Rob, I cannot thank you enough. We're very, very lucky to have received this type of insight from you. I think our audience, it's safe to assume that our audience is really going to appreciate this down the road. As I mentioned, you'll be sharing your slides with us, and we'll have that online for all of our viewers. And I want to be sure to also thank Arzon VC for sponsoring this particular webinar. We couldn't do this without all of our partners in the Middle East and also here in Silicon Valley. So thanks again, Rob. We will be in touch. If we have any other questions that come in, we'll definitely send them your way.
My pleasure, and please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, anybody. Also, Arzon VC, I love them there. They're awesome, so great venture capital firm. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure was ours. Thanks so much, Rob. Take care.
Bye-bye.